What if Atlantis didn't vanish in a flood, but was erased by something far more sinister? What if the mountains we climb weren't shaped by nature, but are the fossilized remains of creatures beyond comprehension? What if the dark side of the moon hides not just secrets, but warnings? And what if everything, your evolution, your perception of time, even the very colors you see, has been manipulated to keep you blind to the truth? These aren't just questions, they're the cracks in the reality we've been told to believe. What if Atlantis did not disappear because of natural phenomena? The last transmission we received from Dr. Wong was nothing but screaming, not the kind of scream you'd expect from someone drowning or being crushed by the immense pressure down here. I've unfortunately heard those before in this line of work. No, this was different. It was the kind of scream that makes you question everything you thought you knew about human vocal cords. Before the radio went dead, I could have sworn I heard whispers underneath her screams, speaking in a language that made my teeth itch. That was 3 days ago. Now, as I sit in my quarters aboard the Nautilus writing this, I need to document everything that's happened. Someone needs to know the truth about what we found down here, and why the ancient Atlanteans chose to sink their entire civilization into the depths. God, I wish I could go back to when I thought they were the victims. My name is Dr. Elaine Carter, and 6 weeks ago I led what was supposed to be the greatest archaeological expedition in human history. Robbie Dahm, our benefactor and tech billionaire extraordinaire, had spared no expense. The Nautilus was a state-of-the-art research vessel equipped with everything from advanced sonar systems to the latest in deep-sea diving technology. Our team was the best in their fields. Dr. Jana Wong, marine biologist with 3 published books on deep-sea ecosystems. James Jimmy Martin, our ROV specialist, who could pilot those machines like they were extensions of his own body. Dr. Thomas Henderson, linguistic expert specializing in ancient Mediterranean languages. And Lisa Park, our geological engineer who first detected the unusual seismic patterns that led us here. The discovery started like a dream. The ruins we found near the Azores weren't just some scattered stones. They were entire buildings, streets, and what appeared to be a massive temple complex, all preserved by the cold, dark waters. The architecture was unlike anything we'd ever seen, combining elements of ancient Greek, Egyptian, and something entirely alien. The preservation was extraordinary, almost as if the city had been deliberately prepared for submersion. Everything changed when we found the archives. Thomas was the first to notice something off about the inscriptions. "These aren't decorative," he said, his voice shaking with excitement over the comm system as we examined the walls. "They're warnings. Look at the repetition of these symbols. They're not telling a story, they're giving instructions." Lisa disagreed. "But the geological data suggests a massive seismic event. The fault lines, the volcanic activity, we're deliberate." Thomas interrupted. "They didn't just sink, they chose to sink. All of it." I remember laughing it off. Famous last words, right? But then we found the central chamber. The massive doors were carved with images that still haunt my dreams. Humanoid figures in poses of worship around a massive tentacled form that seemed to ripple even in solid stone. But it was the writing above the door that changed everything. Thomas's translation was rough, but clear enough. "Here lies bound the deep dreamer, the voice from below, sealed by our sacrifice. Let none disturb this tomb, lest the dreamer wake." Of course, we didn't listen. How could we? We were scientists, rationalists. Robbie was pushing for results, and this chamber promised the kind of discoveries that rewrite history books. Jimmy sent in the ROVs first, their lights illuminating a vast circular room with a central pit that descended into darkness. The water around the pit was weird. It moved against the currents like it was breathing. Jana was the first to start acting strange. She would spend hours staring at the ROV feeds, muttering about patterns in the dark. When I asked her what she meant, she looked at me with bloodshot eyes and said, "Can't you hear them singing? They're so beautiful, so hungry." Then the dreams started. All of us had them. Dreams of swimming in an endless dark, feeling something vast and ancient brushing against our minds like curious fingers. I started seeing things in the corner of my eye, patterns in the ship's corridors that shouldn't be there, hearing whispers in the hum of the engines. Lissa tried to warn us. She noticed that the seismic activity was changing, becoming rhythmic, like a heartbeat. But by then, half the crew was already different. They moved abnormally, spoke abnormally. Jimmy would have conversations with empty rooms. Thomas stopped sleeping entirely, covering his cabin walls with translations that devolved into mad scribbles. Yesterday, Jana insisted on diving to the central chamber despite my direct orders. She said they were calling her. Dr. Wong was one of the most level-headed people I knew, but there was nothing rational in her eyes when she pushed past me to the diving bay. Those screams were the last we heard from her. The thing is, I understand now. With each passing hour, I feel it too. The pull, the whispers, the promise of knowledge beyond human comprehension. The entity they imprisoned here isn't dead or even sleeping. It's been waiting, dreaming, reaching out with thoughts that twist through your mind like tentacles. Robbie is dead. We found him in his quarters this morning, his walls covered in the same symbols from the ruins, carved with his own fingernails. His last message to his board of directors was just 3 words, repeated over and over. "Let it rise. Let it rise. Let it rise." The remaining crew is split. Half want to dive down to the chamber, claiming they can hear it calling. The other half, myself included, are trying to power up the engines and leave. But something's wrong with the instruments. Every time we try to plot a course away from this place, the coordinates keep changing back. If you're reading this, please understand. Atlantis didn't sink because of a natural disaster or divine punishment. They sank their entire civilization to protect the world from something they couldn't kill. And now, thanks to our arrogance, thanks to our refusal to heed their warnings, that thing is awake. The whispers are getting louder now. I can feel it pushing at the edges of my mind, showing me things I can't unsee. Knowledge that no human was meant to have. The water around the ship has started to move in ways that defy physics, and the sonar is picking up something massive, rising from the depths. I have to end this here. Jimmy just announced over the intercom that he's opening all the exterior hatches. Says it's time to let the truth in. I can hear people running in the corridors, screaming, fighting, the ship's tilting, water's coming in. Remember, if you ever find ruins beneath the waves, let them stay buried. Some things were hidden for a reason. God help us all. End of Dr. Carter's final log entry. Recovered from the black box of the research vessel Nautilus, found adrift in the Atlantic with no survivors. 2024. What if the dark side of the moon wasn't just unlit, but deliberately hidden? The moon lies. Everything you know about it is wrong. That pristine white surface, those familiar craters you see from Earth, they're just a mask, carefully crafted to hide what's underneath. I know because I saw what lives on the other side. I saw what the darkness really is. Mission Control's final transmission still echoes in my head. Commander Ortiz, maintain protocol. Do not... Static swallowed the rest. That was 16 hours ago. Now I'm alone in the communications module of Lunar Base Theta, recording this message while I still can. While I'm still... me. They chose us carefully for this mission. 6 experts, all with perfect psych evaluations and spotless records. Dr. Xander James used to joke that his geology degree made him the only person excited about moon rocks. Jenna Peterson could fix any communications array blindfolded. Henry Williams knew every inch of our engineering systems. Dr. Diana Kumar's physics research earned her a Nobel nomination. Carlos Rodriguez was the best medical officer in the program. And me? I was the commander who wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Not after Mars Base Alpha. The incident that changed everything happened during our routine seismic survey. Xander detected an anomaly about 200 meters below the surface, a cavity that shouldn't exist according to our geological models. I still remember his excited voice over the comms. Commander, you need to see this. These readings, they're impossible. I was skeptical at first. After what happened on Mars Base Alpha, God, I still see their faces sometimes. I'd learned to be cautious. 3 good people died because I rushed into a decision. Not this time. But Xander was right. The data was undeniable. We brought it up during our daily briefing, and after heated debate, Mission Control gave us permission to drill. That's when things started going wrong. The equipment malfunctions were subtle at first. Sensors showing impossible readings, communications dropping out for microseconds longer than usual. Jenna insisted something was interfering with our signals, but diagnostics showed nothing wrong. Then Henry disappeared. We were setting up the drilling equipment when he stepped around the corner of the module to adjust a solar panel. Just 10 seconds, that's all it took. When I rounded the corner after him, he was gone. No footprints leading away, no sign of struggle, just empty lunar surface. Deanna found something while we were searching, a strange distortion in the light near where Henry vanished, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. But we were in the vacuum of space. When she tried to record it, her camera stopped working. The next 48 hours were hell. We lost Jenna next, then Carlos. Xander barricaded himself in the geology lab, convinced he'd seen something in the core samples, something that moved. The secure communications module wasn't built for long-term habitation, but it's all I have left. The main base is compromised. I keep the lights at full brightness now, though it doesn't help. They've learned to bend even that to their will. Each time I blink, the shadows creep closer. The structure we found isn't just artificial, it's alive. Or rather, it houses something alive. The entire dark side of the moon is essentially a massive observation post, controlled by beings that have been watching us for longer than humans have existed. We didn't find them. They let us find them. I discovered this too late, after Diana showed me what she'd found in her spectral analysis. The moon's surface isn't static like we thought. It shifts, microscopically, in patterns too precise to be natural. The whole thing is engineered, a shell of programmable matter hiding something massive underneath. Xander figured it out just before they took him. He managed to send me his final analysis. The beings don't just hide in darkness. They are the darkness. They manipulate light itself, bending it around them like a cloak. All those ancient myths about the moon being hollow, about things living in the dark, they weren't myths. Diana's gone now too. I watched it happen. The shadows in her lab just moved, reached for her. She didn't even have time to scream. The strangest part is how calm I feel now. Maybe it's the isolation. Or maybe it's because I finally understand. Everything we thought we knew about space exploration, about pushing boundaries, we were like children playing at the edge of an ocean, thinking we were discovering it, while something ancient watched from the depths. The walls of the modules shift like liquid mercury. Beautiful, really. I used to be afraid of the dark, but now I see it's not darkness at all. It's something else entirely. Something older than light itself. I keep thinking about that first core sample Xander analyzed, how the particles seemed to respond to his touch, how they danced under the microscope. We thought it was electromagnetic interference. We were so wrong. They're here now, not just outside. They're in every shadow, every dark corner. I could run, but where? The entire dark side is theirs, always has been. Was this their plan? To wait until we were ready, until we could truly comprehend what we were seeing? The module's emergency lights are creating patterns I've never seen before, fractal shadows that shouldn't exist. They're not attacking, they're not hostile, they're just curious, studying me like I've studied them. I think I understand now why the others went so quietly. I'm going to turn off the lights. Not because they're making me, but because I want to. I want to see them properly. God, they're magnificent. What if mountains weren't formed naturally, but are the fossilized remains of ancient giants? I never wanted to be right. Every night since we made that discovery, I lie awake wondering if I could have stopped what happened. If I had just walked away when they first called me to that godforsaken mining town, maybe those people would still be alive. But curiosity is a cruel mistress, and my desperate need for redemption in the scientific community blinded me to what was right in front of us. Mountains aren't just mountains. They never were. The scientific community had already branded me a crackpot. The man who sees fossils and fault lines, they'd sneered. 3 months of unemployment and bottom-shelf whiskey had done little to wash away the bitter taste of that last faculty meeting. But when the Rocky Mountain Mining Corporation called about unusual formations in their newest excavation, I couldn't help but think the universe was finally throwing me a bone. Though I never imagined just how literal that would turn out to be. The town of Millbrook sat in the shadow of Mount Sherman, population barely breaking 3,000. As I drove in, the mountain loomed over everything like a sleeping giant. Funny how accurate that description would turn out to be. Dr. Gray? A woman in a hard hat and safety vest approached as I parked near the mine entrance. I'm Amelia Eve, site manager. Thank you for coming on such short notice. She had the weary look of someone who hadn't slept in days. Call me Daniel, I said, grabbing my equipment bag. What exactly are we dealing with here? Amelia's expression tightened. It's easier if I show you, but first you need to sign some NDAs. She handed me a thick stack of papers. The company wants this kept quiet until we understand what we're looking at. I should have recognized that red flag. Major mining companies don't panic over ordinary fossils. The elevator descent took nearly 15 minutes. We've gone deeper than any previous excavation, Amelia explained. That's when we found it. The doors opened to a massive cavern, illuminated by industrial floodlights. My breath caught in my throat. Embedded in the rock wall was what appeared to be a gigantic human femur, at least 50 feet long. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. The bone was wrapped in ancient carvings, primitive pictographs, showing humanoid figures prostrating themselves before mountains with eyes. And scattered throughout were words in a script I'd never seen before. This isn't possible, muttered, running my hand along the fossilized surface. The bone's structure was unmistakable, but its size defied everything we knew about human evolution and physics itself. "There's more," Amelia said quietly. She led me deeper into the tunnel network. "We found this 2 days ago. After that, the tremors started." The chamber she showed me contained what could only be described as a massive eye socket, easily 20 feet across. The rock around it was discolored, taking on an almost flesh-like quality. As I approached with my flashlight, I swear I saw movement behind the crystalline formation where an eye would be. That's when I felt it. A deep, rhythmic vibration that seemed to come from the mountain itself. "How long has this been happening?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The vibration started right after we uncovered the eye. They're getting stronger." Amelia checked her tablet. "And the seismic activity is increasing. We've had 3 minor earthquakes in the past 48 hours. I was about to respond when a deafening crack echoed through the chamber. The ground lurched beneath our feet, sending us stumbling. My flashlight beam caught something that made me question my sanity. The crystalline formation in the eye socket had shifted, like a massive eyelid twitching. "Everyone out, now!" it shouted, but it was too late. The tunnel behind us collapsed in a shower of rocks and dust. We were trapped. That was just the beginning. As we searched for another way out, we discovered that the tunnel layout had somehow changed. Passages that had been straight now curved impossibly, and we weren't alone down there. The first time we saw one of the children, that's what I've come to call them, was in a narrow corridor that shouldn't have existed, according to the mind maps. It stood at least 8 feet tall, humanoid, but otherworldly in ways that defied description. Its skin looked like living stone, and its eyes, God, its eyes, were just like the ones we found in the wall. It didn't attack us, it just watched, then retreated into the darkness when we tried to approach. Later, we would wish it had killed us then, instead of leading us deeper into its parent's body. The mountain isn't just waking up. Through the carvings we've found and the horrible things we've witnessed, I've pieced together the truth. These beings, these titans, weren't meant to sleep forever. The ancient peoples who carved those warnings knew what was coming. The earthquakes, the changing tunnels, the children, it's all part of a birth, or rather, a rebirth. The constant heartbeat haunts my dreams now. Even here, hundreds of miles from any mountain range, I feel it pulsing through the ground. Amelia didn't make it. She sacrificed herself, creating a cave-in that bought me enough time to escape through the old ventilation shafts. Sometimes I wonder if that was mercy, compared to living with what we know. The official story claims it was a mining accident. Structural collapse. Tragic, but simple. They buried the evidence along with the bodies, sealed the mine, and erected warning signs about unstable ground. But they can't bury the truth forever. The seismic activity is spreading. Last week they reported unusual tremors in the Himalayas. The Andes followed 3 days later. The children have been spotted in remote areas across 5 continents. I tried warning them. God knows I tried. But who would believe the ravings of a disgraced paleontologist? The same colleagues who mocked my theories about biological formations now serve on government advisory boards, assuring everyone that the worldwide seismic events are perfectly natural. Natural. I catch myself laughing at that word now. Every morning I check the news with trembling hands, counting the mountain ranges that have started to shift. They're calling it unprecedented tectonic activity, but I know better. We never built our cities in the shadow of mountains. We built them in the shadow of sleeping gods. And now, just like I never wanted to be right, I fear I won't live long enough to be wrong about what comes next. What if human evolution wasn't random, but guided, and our creators are coming back? I keep telling myself there must have been signs we missed, little warnings scattered throughout decades of genetic research that would have prepared us for what was coming. But that's just wishful thinking. The truth is, we never stood a chance. They designed it that way. My name is Dr. Eric Stokes, and I'm recording this at the Chandler Institute's secure facility in Geneva. The guard outside my door thinks I'm writing my official report about the Tehran incident. In a way, I suppose I am. Though after what happened to Dr. Vaughn last week, I doubt anyone in authority will believe what I'm about to share. It started 6 months ago with a call from Maya Rodriguez, my former graduate student. She was working at Boston Children's Hospital, running genetic screenings on newborns. "Eric," she said, her voice tight with concern. "Remember that weird sequence we used to joke about, the one we called the Omega strand? It's active." I nearly dropped my coffee. The Omega strand was our nickname for a peculiar stretch of junk DNA we'd discovered years ago. It appeared in every human genome we'd ever studied, yet served no apparent purpose. Maya and I used to joke that it was like finding the same typo in every book ever written. "That's impossible," I told her. "How many cases?" "3 this week, all showing the same activation pattern." She paused. "And Eric? The babies, they're different." Within a month, similar reports started flooding in from hospitals worldwide. Some newborns displayed accelerated development, learning to walk weeks after birth. Others, well, I still have nightmares about the photos from the Sao Paulo cases. The World Health Organization assembled a task force, and suddenly I found myself working alongside researchers I'd only read about in journals. Dr. Penelope Vaughn, the brilliant but eccentric geneticist from Stanford, Dr. Klaus Weber, who'd practically invented modern genomic sequencing, and Dr. Fatima Hassan, the archaeological geneticist whose work on ancient DNA had revolutionized our understanding of human migration. We worked around the clock, fueled by coffee and growing dread. The activated sequence wasn't random noise. It had structure, complexity. Penelope was the first to suggest it might be a message. "Look at the pattern," she said one night, her eyes so red from staring at screens. "It's not just code, it's coordinates, specific ones." The coordinates led to a remote area outside Tehran. Satellite imagery showed recent archaeological excavations there, but all information about the dig was classified. That's when Fatima dropped the bombshell. "I've been there," she said quietly, 3 years ago. "We found something unusual. The Iranian government shut us down before we could publish. It took weeks of diplomatic negotiations, but we finally got clearance to visit the site. I remember the drive from the airport, watching the barren landscape roll past while Klaus rambled about genetic drift and population bottlenecks, anything to distract from what we might find. The excavation was smaller than I expected, just a few white tents clustered around what looked like a cave entrance. But that entrance, something about its perfectly geometric shape made my skin crawl. "It's not a cave," Fatima explained as we suited up in protective gear. "The structure extends at least 60 meters down. We've only mapped the first level." The air inside was cool and dry, unnaturally so. Our footsteps echoed strangely, as if the walls were absorbing the sound. And the walls themselves, they seemed to pulse with a faint bioluminescence, like a heartbeat just below the surface. Penelope ran her hand along one wall and jerked back. "It's warm," she whispered, and I swear I felt it move. We found the first artifacts in what appeared to be a central chamber, crystalline structures that hummed when touched. walls covered in writings that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles, and in the center, a pillar of black material that defied all attempts at analysis. Fatima worked tirelessly to decode the writings. "They're instructions," she said after 3 days without sleep. "Or maybe a log. It describes genetic engineering on a massive scale, species creation. And look at this symbol. It appears next to human genetic markers." That's when Klaus noticed the beacon. A small pyramid of the same black material as the pillar, half buried in debris. As soon as our lights hit it, it began to glow. "Don't," Penelope started to say, but Klaus had already reached for it. The sound it made. Imagine a scream combined with dial-up internet, amplified to painful levels. By the time we got back to the surface, similar reports were coming in from archaeological sites around the world. Something was awakening. The changes accelerated after that. More mutations, more incidents. The Sao Paulo cases started to look tame in comparison, and then the lights appeared. Most people dismissed the lights as satellites or meteors, but we knew better. We'd seen the instructions in that ancient facility. Humanity wasn't randomly evolved. We were engineered. And now our creators were returning to check on their experiment. I was in the lab when they first appeared. Penelope was showing me something in the microscope. Cellular changes we'd never seen before. When the power went out, in the darkness, we heard something moving, something that breathed unnatural. I made it to the emergency exit. Penelope insisted on grabbing her laptop first. The last time I saw her, she was illuminated by that strange, shifting light that poured through the lab windows. The look on her face. "The guard is knocking. My time's up. I don't know who will read this, or if anyone should, but I need to put the truth somewhere. They're not here to help us. We're not their children, we're their specimens, and the experiment isn't over." What if time wasn't linear, but a loop that resets after catastrophic failure? Here is an email received from a woman named Jane Reeves. To redacted at gmail.com. Subject: What I found in Port Haven. Time: 11:58, 47 p.m. UTC. The fog rolling under my door is thicker than blood. My fingers keep hitting the wrong keys as I type this, and that goddamn humming is making it hard to think straight. I've got maybe 2 minutes before everything resets again. 2 minutes to document 30 years of hidden journals, missing people and shadows that move like broken puppets. I came here 3 weeks ago to investigate a string of disappearances. Simple enough assignment, right? Small coastal town, missing persons cases spanning decades, local authorities baffled, the usual true crime fodder that pays my bills. Except nothing about Port Haven is usual. The first red flag should have been Mrs. Geller at the Seadrift Motel. When I checked in, she looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. "Room 207 again?" she asked, then caught herself. "I mean, would room 207 be all right?" I brushed it off as small-town oddness, but now I understand why her hands trembled as she handed me the key. The déjà vu started small, a coffee shop conversation I could swear I'd had before. A kid's red balloon floating past my window at exactly 3:17 p.m. 3 days in a row. The way Harbor Master Tom Sullivan finished my sentences before I spoke them, then looked terrified when I pointed it out. But it was Homer Reynolds' journal that cracked this whole thing wide open. I found it hidden in the local library's archives, wedged behind a shelf of maritime records. Homer was a high school physics teacher here in 1987. He documented the same things I was experiencing: the fog, the humming, the shadows that moved wrong. He called them quantum observers, and believed they were maintaining some kind of temporal loop. Here's the kicker. The journal ended mid-sentence. When I asked the librarian about Homer Reynolds, she went pale. "We've never had a physics teacher by that name," she insisted. But I found his photo in a 1987 yearbook. He looked exactly like the shadow figure I'd spotted watching me from across the street the day before. The locals know more than they let on. They've developed this elaborate dance of avoiding certain topics, certain places. Old Bill at the Harbor Bar finally cracked after his 6th whiskey. "They take the ones who figure it out," he slurred, refusing to meet my eyes. "The ones who try to change things. But it doesn't matter. Nothing matters when the loop resets." 11:59 p.m. UTC. I'm running out of time, so here's the truth. Port Haven isn't just a town, it's a focal point, a place where reality is thin. The loopers, that's what I call them now, use it as a reset button for humanity. When we mess up too badly, nuclear war, climate collapse, AI uprising, take your pick, they loop us back and try again. Small changes each time, but the outcome is always the same. I know, because I found my own journals, dozens of them, hidden throughout town. Different handwriting, different years, different versions of me, all reaching the same conclusion. I'm part of the loop somehow. Maybe we all are. The fog is at my window now. That damned humming is making my teeth vibrate. But here's what they don't know. I've been leaving breadcrumbs, little changes, messages to myself. Each loop, I get closer to understanding. This email might disappear when time resets, but the knowledge, something always carries over. They're here. 3 of them, standing in my room. I won't look directly at them. Learned that lesson in Loop 28. They think they're erasing everything, but they don't understand human memory the way they think they do. Every reset leaves microscopic cracks in their system. And in those cracks, I've hidden pieces of myself, scattered across time like seeds. See you in the next loop. What if the colors we can't see weren't missing from our spectrum, but deliberately hidden to prevent us from seeing certain entities? I used to think I was lucky to be chosen as a beta tester. Now I understand it wasn't luck at all. They were watching me long before I put those glasses on. They knew exactly what they were looking for. March 15th, 2023. Got the email today confirming I'm in. Out of thousands of applicants, Chromatech picked me for their revolutionary visual enhancement technology. The application process was intense. Multiple personality assessments, medical history reviews, even a genetic screening. They said they needed creative professionals who work with color, which makes sense, given I'm a graphic designer. But something about the way they emphasize mental stability in the screening feels odd. Whatever. The compensation is incredible. $5,000 for a month of testing, plus I get to keep the prototype. With rent in Seattle getting insane, I couldn't say no. March 20, 2023. First day with the glasses. Holy shit. I don't even know how to describe what I'm seeing. It's like someone turned up the saturation on reality, but not in a garish way. There are these subtle variations in color I never noticed before. The sky isn't just blue. It has these gorgeous, shifting undertones that remind me of Aurora Borealis. The plants in my apartment are practically singing with new hues. Even my boring office looks different. My coworker Jessica's sweater that I thought was plain navy has these beautiful threads of color running through it that I don't even have words for. The tech behind these is wild. The rep explained that human eyes normally only perceive about 0.35% of the electromagnetic spectrum. These glasses somehow expand that range. I asked if it was dangerous, but they assured me it's perfectly safe. The only side effect might be some mild disorientation while my brain adjusts to processing the new visual information. March 25, 2023. Something weird happened on the subway today. I was people watching. These glasses make everyone look fascinating. When I noticed this sort of shimmer in the air around this guy, who was clearly having a bad day. He was practically radiating stress, snapping at anyone who bumped into him. At first, I thought it was just distortion from the glasses, like a heat wave effect. But it seemed to be moving with purpose, sort of coiling around him. I blinked hard, and it was gone. Probably just the disorientation they warned about. March 28th, 2023. I'm seeing more of those shimmer things. They're getting clearer. Today I watched one hovering near my boss during a particularly tense meeting. It looked almost like heat distortion wrapped in cellophane, but it moved. It drifted closer whenever voices got raised. I swear it got more substantial as the argument escalated. Called Chromatech's support line. The woman who answered seemed weirdly interested when I described what I was seeing. She said they'd make a note of it and hung up before I could ask any more questions. April 2, 2023. I can see them clearly now. God, I wish I couldn't. They're like praying mantises made of twisted glass and shadow, but unreal somehow. Too many joints, too many angles that shouldn't exist. They gather anywhere there's conflict or pain. I watched one today, perched on the shoulder of a crying woman at the coffee shop. It was feeding somehow. The more she cried, the more solid it became. I tried taking the glasses off, but I can still see faint outlines of them. It's like they've burned themselves into my vision. What the hell did these glasses do to me? April 5, 2023. Went to Chromatech's office today. The building was empty. Not just closed, but completely cleaned out, like they were never there. The security guard said they moved out overnight a week ago, no forwarding address. Found an online forum for other beta testers. Most of the posts are from worried family members. Apparently, lots of testers have been hospitalized for acute psychiatric episodes. The rest have just disappeared. The forum keeps getting taken down and popping up on different sites. April 8, 2023. My eyes are changing. The irises are developing these tiny fractal patterns that catch the light wrong. People are starting to notice. Jessica asked if I was wearing costume contacts today. The entities are everywhere now. They're getting bolder. One tried to touch me yesterday. Its limb passed through my arm, and I felt this deep, bone-chilling cold, like it was trying to pull something out of me. I've started researching the company executives. Found an old photo that made my blood run cold. Behind the CEO, half hidden in the shadow of a potted plant, was one of them. But this was from 2015, long before the glasses. They weren't giving us the ability to see new colors. They were removing whatever filter normally blinds us to these things. April 10, 2023. I tried to tell Jessica about what I was seeing today. Big mistake. She was concerned at first, probably because of how my eyes looked now. But then her expression changed. Not to fear or disbelief, but to something empty. She tilted her head at an angle that wasn't quite right and asked if I wanted to meet with HR to discuss my concerns. One of them was perched on her desk. As she spoke, I watched its limbs slowly curl around her shoulders. I left without saying another word, but it followed me home. The scratching started an hour ago, not on the wood. The sounds are coming from inside the door, like it's trying to tear its way through the space between spaces. I smashed the glasses 10 minutes ago, watching the shards scatter across my bathroom floor. I caught fragments of my reflection. The fractal patterns in my eyes are spreading past my irises now, turning the whites into kaleidoscopes of colors that shouldn't exist. The scratching is in the walls now, the ceiling, getting closer. My phone's screen just flickered, showing colors I've only seen through the glasses. They're in the digital spaces, too.